So this question comes from Sharafudheen, and it's a little bit confusing. It's about two sentences here, and not very good English. So I'm gonna try to translate for this for you guys. So basically, this guy has a server. It has three 250 gig hard drives in the server, and it is in a RAID 5, so disk striping with parity RAID. Apparently, the partition is full, and so what he wants to do is he wants to pull one hard drive out and put a larger hard drive into this RAID, and he's asking how to go about doing this. So basically what he wants to do is he wants to increase the volume that the RAID can handle because it's filling up. This happens a lot in the tech world where people go out, consultants go out, or the IT people go out, they buy a server, the server lasts a lot longer than they expected, and so data storage requirements grow past what the server was ever expected to normally handle. So the first thing to think about before you start messing with that RAID at all, because basically what I'm going to tell you is you don't really want to mess around with the RAID, but before you even think about messing around with the RAID, if your partition gets to be full, the first thing that you want to do is make sure that that RAID has in fact only been turned into one partition. So a lot of times, back in the old days, it was considered best practice. I would have argued against it, but it was, that when you were going to be installing a server, you would actually install, you would create multiple partitions on that server. So you would have the system partition and the data partition and maybe a database partition, right? So sometimes when the partition that your system was on filled up, you didn't have to worry about the RAID or any kind of complex stuff like that. Basically, all you had to do was resize the partition. Now, with whatever server you're dealing with, that can be more or less of a hassle. If you're dealing with a 2012 server, I'm not sure about 2008, but 2012 server, it's no big deal. It's built into the operating system. If you're dealing with an earlier server, if you're dealing with like a 2003 server, you have to go out and you have to buy a piece of software that will resize the partition. I used to use something called a Acronis Disk Director, I think it was called, for a server. It cost about 600 bucks, but it worked amazingly well. And again, you didn't have to worry about messing around with the partition and screwing up your computer. You could install the software that would change the partition size. You would simply modify the partition size and away you go. So basically you steal a little bit of partition from the data partition, give it to your system partition, and then your server will stay up and running for the next year or two, and then you should get rid of it anyway. So the first thing that I would say is take a look at your partitions. If you only have one partition, and you can only have one partition, you have one partition that's taking up all the space on that RAID 5, then you're screwed. We've got to go somewhere else. But a lot of times you'll go in there and you'll find out either there are multiple partitions, and you can steal a little bit from one to give to the other, or sometimes you find some really strange crap. Like if you buy servers directly from the manufacturer, sometimes they do the stupidest thing in the world where they literally, you may have, like a 250 gig worth of volume, but then they'll only partition it like by default to 100 gigs. So again, you're filling up that space, but you're not actually filling up the entire volume. Again, all you have to do is resize the partition and away you go. So with that, what you do is you go out, you'd either buy or find partition resizing software and go from there. What you choose is up to you. I like Acronis Disk Director. It costs 500 bucks. If you don't like it, there is open source stuff available out there. So if that is not the case, if you look at your partitions and you go, no, Eli, we have used all the volume, all the amount of storage on that entire RAID array, we got to enlarge it. Sadly, if you're dealing with normal RAID 5, there is no way to easily enlarge that array. You cannot simply turn off one hard drive, pull it out, put a new hard drive in, and make the bigger array. The reason for that is when you do disk striping with parity, you have to keep the disk stripe the same size on all your drives. So you can use a 300 gig hard drive, a 500 gig hard drive, and a terabyte drive in order to create a RAID 5 array, but the stripe will only be 300 gigs. So out of that, you would get 900 gigs of total RAID size, which would only be 300 or 600 gigs of actual storage space, even though technically you have 300, 500, and 1 terabyte. So you would think you would get 1.8 terabytes of storage. Remember, you can only stripe across the smallest disk you have, so you're actually getting a third of that. You're only getting 600 gigs of usable storage. So if you pull a drive out and you plug another drive in, it's not really going to change anything for you. So what you have to do, sadly, is basically what you have to do is if you're going to resize your RAID array, what you do is you do a full backup of the system, a full, complete backup of the system that you absolutely and utterly trust. Then, essentially, what you do is you break the RAID, you pull out the old hard drives, you put in the new hard drives, you recreate the RAID, and then you restore from that backup that you've created. Unless you're using special software or special operating system or something like that, which it does not sound like you are, really that is your option. Basically, you back up the entire system, make sure it is a full and complete bare metal backup. Then again, I say back up, pull the drives out, put new drives in, create a new RAID to whatever size you want, put the data back on, and away you go. So those are your options. But again, don't dismiss the idea of that whole partition thing. A lot of times you go in, a lot of new techs will be like, the RAID is full. And then people like me walk in behind them and go, no, the partition is full. The RAID has more than enough storage on it. But take a look at those things and go from there. Yeah,